Hi, everyone. So thanks very much for coming back and joining us for another Alumni Chat. This time I'm joined by an alumna from our Uganda post-conflict program. And Kyra, thank you very much for joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself for a moment?
Yeah, my name is Kyra Fox. I am a student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison going into my final year. And last fall of 2016, I did the Uganda Post-Conflict Transformation Program.
Well, thank you very much for taking some time out. I know it's summer vacation, but you must be gearing up for your senior year there. So we'll jump right into it. So there are many study abroad programs out there. And what's the main reason you decided on SIT Uganda?
Yeah, good question. So I knew that I was interested in sub-Saharan Africa, and it was a region that I really wanted to study abroad in, not just travel to. I really wanted to be able to do a program that taught me about life there and integrated me into a community there. So I was really looking for something that was kind of unconventional in terms of study abroad. I had already studied abroad at a university program where I was just directly enrolled in the university, and I found out about SIT and the very field-based nature of SIT's programs, and so I was really excited about that. And so I knew I wanted sub-Saharan Africa, and I knew I wanted an SIT program, so I tried to find one that had both. And I also knew that I was interested in studying conflict, and that could lead me to various countries, but I finally narrowed it down to the program in Gulu because it just seemed like a pretty direct fit with my academic interests and with my desire to do fieldwork while studying abroad.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you a question here where you have to narrow it down. What is your favorite aspect of the program? You
Oh
mentioned
gosh.
a couple different things.
Yeah.
Or you can answer what one thing you learned there in Gulu that you don't think you could have learned anywhere else.
That is a great question. So I think that my favorite and the thing I learned kind of go hand in hand. So, like I said, I came into this program wanting to do field work, but I didn't really understand or realize the extent to which research was part of SIT programs. Not very many people at my school do SIT, so I was actually the first person I knew to do this program. So I didn't know a lot about it, and then I went in, and my fellow students all had their research projects like completely planned out, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have not given this enough thought, clearly. So I felt a little overwhelmed at first, but the research component of the program ended up being pretty much a fundamental part of my experience, and I would say the most transformative part. And I think why that was because it's one thing to be a foreign researcher in a sub-Saharan African country. It's another thing to be a white foreign researcher, and it's a totally other thing to do this sort of research in a post-conflict community, which Gulu is. And having not had a lot of background in field research, I was very nervous going into it about learning how to do ethical research, and that was really important to me, and I wanted it to be as important to SIT, and it was. And I think that the research methods and ethics classes that I took there and the way that the program kind of eased me into doing ethical research and taught me the best tactics to kind of minimize my impact as a researcher while still being able to conduct quality research, and just the ability to get to know the people with whom I was working. All of these things combined to really teach me a lot about what it means to be an ethical researcher, which I think will take me pretty far beyond just that study abroad program. So I'm really grateful for that.
That sounds like you had an amazing experience there with the independent study project. Do you want to go a little bit further and let us know what it is exactly you researched there in Gulu?
Yeah, definitely. It might make it clear why the ethical research component is so important, because our program was on post-conflict transformation, of course, and I was really interested in the former child combatants that existed in Gulu. So the war that happened there, the rebel army conscripted a lot of child soldiers forcefully and made them to commit atrocities for this war. And I was very interested in how these former combatants were both victims of abduction, because the vast majority were abducted, and they were also perpetrators of conflict. So where does that really leave them when it comes to post-conflict transformation? How do we deal with justice? How do we deal with reintegration? I was very interested in their kind of conflicting roles in this conflict. So I did case studies of 3 of these former combatants. I spent a few days with each of them and got to know them and talked a lot about their role in the war and how they perceived their role in the war, and where they perceive themselves on this victim-perpetrator spectrum, if you will have it. And I also combined that with some interviews and focus groups from like community leaders and just local people, just groups, communities, and to kind of try to form a holistic picture of the victim perpetrator status of these combatants.
Wow, that is no easy task in a short semester abroad. So
No.
that leads into my next question here of, have you had the opportunity to continue those studies now that you're back in Wisconsin along the theme or region or your independent study project as well?
Definitely. So yeah, I was really, as I mentioned, really happy with the process, and it really kind of made me love field research, which I wasn't expecting. I never considered myself a researcher before, but coming back, I became really committed to doing a senior thesis on this topic, although I'm broadening it a little bit to the question of why children commit atrocities in general. So I'm kind of embarking on that process now with the guidance of, the people who helped me in Uganda. I'm still in contact with a few of them, as well as my advisors back home. So I've been able to kind of merge what I learned while studying abroad with my academic interests and my resources here. So I'm going to continue that for my senior thesis, and I'm guessing it will continue to be a research passion of mine, because I just was very lucky to stumble upon a topic that I really cared about.
Well, you definitely have to keep us in the loop if you end up publishing or things like that. We always like to
Definitely.
hear from our alumni. So now to change directions a little bit, I know in northern Uganda they speak Acholi. Were you introduced to that language before you got there, or can you say anything in it still?
Yeah, I didn't know any Atoli before I got there, but both taking classes and staying with a host family and doing research with native speakers, like, just forced me to. I say I became fluent in greetings, nothing else, but I really felt like these greetings helped me kind of communicate with people in a way like no one bothers to learn Acholi when they go to northern Uganda. So it really made a difference. I think that we got the chance to learn that. So I can say afoyo, which means like hello, thank you, hi, how are you, everything combined. And itianining, which is how are you, and yeah.
That is very important to greet properly
Yeah.
in Africa when you come into a situation. So another aspect that students always ask about is the host country food. So how would you describe the food that you came across in northern Uganda?
So I was lucky that both my host mother and the lovely woman who cooked food for us at the SIT compound were both amazing cooks. So I got treated to the best of northern Uganda's cuisine. Usually it was some sort of starch base, so either rice or like posho or millet, which are these kind of like thick, like Play-Doh consistency, almost grains that you kind of use to scoop up the rest of your food, the vegetables and the meats on your plate. So yeah, there was that. There's chapati, which is this really yummy like pancake. I think its origins are in India, but it was brought to Uganda, and now it's a really popular street food. So munching on that for breakfast. Yeah, lots of good things. Really healthy, which was kind of fun.
And very fresh too.
Yes, so fresh. Everything was fresh, and I missed the mango season, but I got just a bit of it, and they were really amazing.
And I always joke with Charlotte and Martha that I only eat pineapple in Uganda now.
Yeah, because back here it just doesn't even taste like anything.
No, it doesn't taste the same whatsoever. So now I'm sure as you explain your semester in Uganda, many people have never heard of SIT. You mentioned that you were the first person in your school to go to SIT Uganda. So if you could explain SIT in 1 or 2 sentences, how would you do that?
Oh gosh. I would say that SIT is not your typical study abroad experience, and for that, I'm very grateful because I think there's a tendency for students to go abroad and just kind of recreate their own lives at home wherever they are abroad, which is very fine, but that wasn't what I wanted. I really wanted a program that gave me, as much insight as I can have as an outsider, which is not much, but it gave me kind of the maximum that I could really have in the 4 months that I was there. So I would say that SIT is unconventional, but definitely worth it if you're willing to take the plunge.
And I hope many more people will be willing to take the plunge.
Me too.
East Africa, Central East Africa is a very underrepresented part of the world that we definitely need to learn more about, in my opinion. So now we've come to the end here, but I always like to give the alumni a chance to have the last word. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention today that we didn't touch upon?
Sure. I think for people considering these programs, like I said, it's not going to be your typical experience. And I think that going into it, it's really important to be humble and to just listen. There were some people on my program, other people I know who had, studied Uganda or different parts of Africa thoroughly and came in thinking they were the experts. And I think that can be really harmful to your experience. So I think the best part is to be humble, to listen to the people around you, let people tell their own stories. And I think if you do that, I think you can have a very transformative experience for someone who grew up so far away from maybe what you might be experiencing there.
Well, thank you very much again for taking some time today, and I wish you the best of luck with your senior year.
Thank you so much.